future of the auto industry is increasingly electric and connected. And so to remain competitive and to realize our potential, we must develop the entire value chain for next generation vehicles, harnessing Canada's exceptional capabilities in auto production, including the world's greatest workforce, including globally recognized parts suppliers and leading-edge research and development. We'll combine these strengths with new battery supply chains that will power the future of mobility, reinforced by Canada's IT expertise, world-leading AI and robotics technologies, to position Canada as a global leader in vehicle electrification and autonomous.
Canada is making a move that could change the balance of power in North America's automotive industry. As major manufacturing and investment opportunities land on Canadian soil, the United States risks losing ground in one of the world's most important economic battles. And the full impact of this shift is only starting to become visible. Volkswagen broke ground on a $7 billion battery gigafactory in Street. Thomas, Ontario VW's first ever lithium-ion battery cell manufacturing facility in North America, and the largest factory in Canada by footprint when completed. The plant, operated by Volkswagen's battery subsidiary PowerCo, will produce up to 90 gigawatt hours of battery capacity annually, enough to power approximately 1 million electric vehicles per year when it reaches full production in 2027. That single facility is the most visible marker of a structural transformation underway in Canada's automotive sector that has been assembling quietly for 5 years and is now becoming impossible to ignore. The investment totals that have accumulated in Ontario's automotive corridor since 2021 describe an industrial realignment on a scale Canada has not seen since the original Auto Pact of 1965. Between 2021 and 2024, Ontario secured foundational investments from Honda in Alliston at 15 billion Canadian dollars, Volkswagen in Street, Thomas at 7 billion Canadian dollars, and Stellantis in Windsor at 5 billion Canadian dollars. Establishing the province as the primary center of Canada's EV assembly and battery manufacturing. Quebec attracted Northvolt's $7 billion battery and cathode active materials gigafactory, positioning itself as a critical upstream node in the battery materials supply chain by leveraging its clean energy grid and mineral resources. The combined committed investment across these projects exceeds 34 billion Canadian dollars directed at building an electric vehicle supply chain that Canada does not currently possess at scale, but is actively constructing. The Honda investment is the most comprehensive of the announced programs because it targets the full vertical stack rather than a single facility. Honda announced plans to build a comprehensive EV value chain in Canada with an approximate investment of $11 billion US, including investment by joint venture partners. The investment plans to retool existing facilities and build a new, standalone Honda EV battery plant in Alliston, Ontario. The value chain also includes a cathode active material processing plant and a separator plant through joint venture partnerships with POSCO Future M and Asahi Kasei, respectively. Once operational in 2028, the production capacity of the EV plant is expected to reach 240,000 EVs per year, while the EV battery plant will have a capacity of producing 36 gigawatt-hours per year. The strategic logic of the Honda investment structure illustrates what makes Canada's approach different from simply attracting foreign assembly plants. A cathode active material processing plant converts refined lithium, nickel, and other battery minerals into the electrode materials that battery cell manufacturing requires. A separator plant produces the membrane that physically separates battery cell electrodes. Both are high-value intermediate processing steps that Canada has historically skipped exporting the raw mineral and importing the finished component. The Honda program installs both of those intermediate steps in Ontario, alongside the battery cell plant and the vehicle assembly operation. For the first time, Canada is building the complete chain from mineral processing through cell production to vehicle assembly within its own borders. Automakers assembling EVs in Ontario, Stellantis, GM, Ford, Honda, will have access to locally manufactured cells. For the first time, Canada is on the cusp of closing the loop. Mining investment only makes sense if processing exists. Processing only makes sense if cell producers are located nearby. Cell producers only invest where EV platforms are already being built. Thomas is the keystone that allows the whole arch to stand. The mineral foundation that makes this industrial architecture viable rather than aspirational is Canada's documented critical mineral position. The Ring of Fire in northern Ontario contains one of North America's largest nickel deposits, the same nickel that every EV battery requires in quantities that are currently sourced predominantly from Indonesia, Russia, and the Philippines. Quebec's graphite resources, including the Matawini mine that broke ground in May 2026 as the largest in the G7, supply the anode material that battery manufacturers need in growing volumes. Saskatchewan's lithium and rare earth potential is under active exploration. British Columbia's lithium pegmatites near Revelstoke expanded the provincial mineral portfolio into battery materials. Canada is not simply a location where battery factories have been built. It is the jurisdiction where the minerals those factories require are located, giving the industrial cluster a self-reinforcing geographic logic that no other jurisdiction outside China currently possesses at comparable scale. The trade conflict context that runs through all of these investment decisions is the vulnerability that Canada's automotive strategy is explicitly designed to address. Canada's automotive industry exported approximately 58 billion Canadian dollars worth of vehicles and parts to the United States in 2024. Almost all of that went to a single market. The 25% Section 232 tariff on Canadian assembled vehicles that the Trump administration imposed in 2025 has reduced production at Ontario auto plants by approximately 30% year over year. The CUSMA review deadline of July 1st, 2026 is approaching with the American negotiating position, demanding that 50% of vehicle content be specifically American manufactured, a requirement that would structurally penalize Canadian content in every vehicle, regardless of how much North American sourcing it contains. The federal government's response to that vulnerability is the February 2026 Canadian Automotive Strategy, which formalizes the industrial investment framework that has been operating through ad hoc agreements since 2021. The strategy ties government support directly to domestic value chain development, favoring investments that capture processing, manufacturing, and technology development within Canada, rather than investments that use Canada as a low-cost assembly location for technology and components designed elsewhere. The Electric Vehicle Availability Standard, which set a target of EVs representing 20% of all car sales in Canada by 2026, was paused by the federal government in February 2026 amid changing market conditions, a decision that industry analysts flagged as creating policy uncertainty for the investment commitments already in progress. The challenges embedded in Canada's automotive transition are documented and active. Honda postponed the pace of its EV supply chain construction in Ontario in May 2025, citing changing conditions. The federal government's pause of the EV availability standard creates precisely the demand uncertainty that battery plant operators need to avoid when making multi-billion-dollar capacity commitments. EV adoption rates across North America have grown more slowly than the projections that informed investment decisions made in 2022 and 2023. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has reviewed the subsidy structure supporting the major battery investments and found that the government's projected fiscal returns depend on production volumes that current demand conditions have not yet confirmed. PowerCo EV battery gigafactory construction is underway at St. Thomas, Ontario. Once in operation in 2027, the 3 factories at the $7 billion manufacturing complex will roll out enough batteries every year for about 1 million EVs. Electric vehicles are the future of the global automotive sector, said Frank Blom, CEO of PowerCo. The arc of Canada's automotive investment over the past 5 years describes a country that has committed tens of billions of dollars and a generation of industrial policy to building a battery and EV manufacturing ecosystem that is structurally independent of American components, American technology licenses, and American political decisions about which vehicles qualify for subsidies. Whether that ecosystem reaches full production at the scale committed depends on whether demand conditions, trade negotiations, and the pace of EV adoption converge in the window the investments were designed for.